Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Acquisitions Anonymous. Just me, Connor, and Heather today. And so we talked about a great deal, quote unquote, in a wellness franchise concept, 3 units in the New York area. They say that it's passive, it's priced at a premium. So there was a lot that we didn't like about it, but it led to an interesting conversation about not only the landscape of wellness businesses in general, but also the SBA lending landscape and different profiles of buyers where you may think that it's easy to get an SBA loan, but it actually isn't in reality. So stay tuned for the episode. We had some really interesting thoughts on it, and we hope you enjoy.
Hey everyone, it's Bill, and I want to tell you about maybe the most exciting sponsor we've had in a long time on the pod. It's called Capital Pad, and it is the thing that I wish existed when I started my journey of operating and investing in small businesses. So Capital Pad is a marketplace for acquisition entrepreneurs, that is, people who want to buy a business and need capital to list their deals and solicit capital from other people who want to invest in acquisition deals. So if you want to back somebody buying a small business, Capital Pad is the place to do it. And if you want to buy a business and need capital, you can go on Capital Pad to be introduced to investors. So the really great thing too from the investor side is that Capital Pad takes care of all of the details that can get hairy with small business acquisitions. They handle standardized terms, standardized governance, standardized distributions, all upfront in black and white. Basically, Capital Pad professionalizes investing in small businesses. And the returns can be really, really good. I'm so stoked they exist. It's founded by my friend Travis, who is a phenomenal entrepreneur in his own right. So if this sounds like something that is appealing to you, if you want to buy a small business and need capital, or if you want to invest in small businesses, go check out capitalpad.com and tell them that Acquisitions Anonymous sent you.
Connor, good to see you again.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We're taking over the podcast, Connor and I. Bill and
Forever?
Mills. Maybe. I mean, if they don't come back, we can.
We'll see if that happens. But
yeah, we'll see if that happens.
Let's dive into a franchise resale, if that sounds good.
Yes, it does. What have you got?
So this is a network of 3 passive, this is a quote, this is not me, but because that's my least favorite word when talking about a small business, but network of 3 passive boutique wellness centers in NYC.
All right.
So asking price here is $2.6 million. Gross revenue is just under 3.6. Cash flow is $536K. And the description, it says executive management business model with strong team in place. So network of 3 locations across 60 blocks in a great residential area of Manhattan. This boutique fitness wellness model is part of a franchise with over 400 open locations. This is a very simple business model, and it all happens in less than 1,500 square feet per location. Recurring revenue, less than 1% cost of goods sold, and a few employees to make this a great quality of life business. This is a network of wellness centers. This network of wellness centers has growing sales and layers of management in place to help make this an executive management business model. Many franchisees have full-time jobs, and for many franchise owners, running 3 units is their full-time job. If you are looking for a premier wellness brand and premier locations with great cash flow that is simple to operate and has growing sales, call about listing blank. So this is in New York. Real estate is leased. They don't tell us how much the rent is. They disclose $600K in FF&E. And this business is an established franchise. I have a strong intuition that this is a stretching concept, and we won't share which one it is.
That makes sense. And I do know about those stretching places. I have been to them. I've been stretched. It is kind of a unique concept because it's not a gym. You're not getting a workout. Technically, I guess you could go stretch on your own, right? But it's assisted stretching. The one, that I've done, and it does help to have assisted, someone helping you get into these positions that stretch you further and also assess you like, this is an area where you're tight and these are some things you could do, and also kind of track your progress. So they're kind of interesting. What do you think?
Just to set the stage for the consumer experience, I've never been to one of these, but you go in, my understanding is you lay down on a table that's kind of like a massage table. Is that right? And then they have all these bands and different contraptions that, depending on your treatment plan, they basically help you stretch to improve your mobility, your flexibility, et cetera. Is that correct?
That's correct. But it's not like it's an individual room. Like when you go for a massage, you have like a private room. This is just like an open space with a bunch of those tables and, different people working on different, clients that are coming in and out. But yeah, you're mostly just laying on this table and they're moving you around in almost kind of the way a chiropractor does, but not really, a little different, more stretch oriented. And that's it. I think it's a 45-minute session. And, like any of these fitness packages, they want you to buy, either a membership or so many sessions. And, so they want you to keep coming back, basically.
So the first time that I heard about this business was in 2019 while I was still in the boutique fitness world of franchising. And I thought it was very dumb. I was like, there's no way that it's going to work because like the advantage of boutique fitness or part of the advantage is the labor model, because one person teaching a Pilates class or a cycle class or a yoga class, it's one staff member that can serve 10, 20 customers at one time. And I was like, so in this, it's a one-to-one labor model. I'm like, I can't see how it works. And I was colossally wrong on that. Like a lot of them have done really well. And, I think part of it is like the customer retention is very strong because I think that the modality works and it really does produce results, which is at its core important. And the other thing that I think that I missed was the real estate component of this. I mean, you're talking about 12 to 1,500 square feet.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Which when you're running a business in Manhattan, that's a big chunk of the P&L. It's just it's a very efficient use of space. So yeah, I'm kicking myself over that one, but yeah, it's a solid business.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you my experience. When I went in, it was a lot of young, almost ready to graduate college or just graduated, and they had like degrees in kinesiology and sports medicine. They wanted to get experience in something that was in their field. And a lot of them, if you talk to them, they're also personal trainers on the side. So I think some of them were actually getting, this was their job and also a source of leads. Like if you might want a trainer, you might end up meeting them here. It was not really part of the business model, but I think it's just kind of the way that it worked out. And it was nice. I mean, I think they did a great job. I am curious about the one-to-one though. Like you point out, that's kind of an important point. They're saying less than 1% cost of goods sold and few employees. So how does that work if it is, every client has to spend 45 minutes with one employee?
Well, I mean, it depends on how many people they're serving at one time. And, one thing I was going to ask, do you remember how much it cost?
Yeah, it was a little overpriced. Like what I felt at the end of the day was I don't remember exactly what it cost, but I felt like, well, I don't know that that's worth it.
Yeah. The one-to-one model, I mean, what's concerning about that is just the labor rate in general, but there's a numerator and a denominator to that equation. So if they're charging quite a premium and they can afford to pay somebody, a premium, then there's a chance that their labor rate is still somewhat strong. But yeah, I don't know how many people they're able to churn. I mean, I guess it depends on, just how big the space is, how many employees they have at one time. But they have 3 or 4 people working at one time and, 3 or 4 people are circling on an hourly basis. That's still strong revenue on a daily basis.
Right. And, they had a good reservation system, so it was always crowded. There was always hard to get the appointment exactly when you wanted it. So they were busy. And so, I think that's what it comes down to is it works. People like anything that's good for them. Right. And this is maybe one of the easier things to sort of sign up for because it's not a workout and you can still walk out of there feeling like you did something positive for your health and you didn't really have to try too hard, I guess.
So they put passive in the heading there. And,
yes.
I again, no small business is passive, but I do think that if you're somebody that is working a full-time job and wants to own a business, like these people did it the right way. And, the people that get into some sweaty, complex, small home service business and try to, keep their 9 to 5, that is not the right way, despite what, some franchisors would tell you. So, they're asking, we'll talk about, the valuation and everything, but they're asking a premium valuation relative to the size of this, and they have a pretty strong case to make there if
it's
their
truly
level
passive.
of involvement checks. That's exactly right. If it checks out.
Right.
So.
And I guess this is, I don't know. I kind of feel like businesses like this, it's a lot of marketing, right? So what are you getting? What is the marketing system that the seller's been using? Is it effective? Have they had to change their marketing, methods a lot? Are you going to have to be on your toes in that same way to keep these centers or these locations at their full capacity. There's a lot to consider as to what, how hard are you really working? Frankly, if I'm getting $536,000 of cash flow and I'm not really and I can go to my job and relax when I get home, I don't know if that I would sell it. So that's where I always think, well, how passive is it really? Yes, maybe someone at the right age and energy level is able to pull it off, but maybe they're getting tired. Maybe it is, a bit of a hassle to try to do both. And
Yeah.
it's not big enough maybe for them to quit their job.
Maybe so. And the other interesting thing about this is if this is the brand that I think that it is, I think that their basis in this is under $1 million. Like I think that they have created a lot of enterprise value. I may be off on that since it is New York.
Yeah.
But that's just something for a buyer to keep in mind is that this is not something where they're up against what their basis is and their expectations are going to be anchored in that way. They probably will have some flexibility to come down if they don't get demand at a 5.5 or whatever that is.
And you taught me the term basis bias.
Basis bias. That is a problem.
Yeah, and what you're saying is there's not much of basis bias in this particular situation. So that's good.
Correct.
Right.
That's correct. Okay. So, 1% cost of goods sold, that's, I don't know what they're including in that, but it's clearly not very, very much. Your major line items in this business it's rent, it's labor, and it's marketing. Anything else you think?
No, that's probably it. That's probably it. And labor, I guess I would be really interested to know like how much turnover they've had, how much work it is to keep your labor full, because that's the tough part in some of these businesses as well, is the labor doesn't want to stick around very long. Like the folks that I described, I can't imagine if that's your type of labor. I don't know if it's the case in this particular one, but in the one that I went to, it was that they probably don't stick around very long. Those are, young people coming out of college, figuring out what they're going to do long term, and they're not going to keep a job like this long term. So you're always turning over, you're always having to find new employees. So I would be curious about that as well.
I don't know why I had this in my head, but I had in my head that there was some kind of, not licensing, but some kind of a certification. And there may be that they have to go through here. But I'm just like, if you're, that's a pretty sensitive thing to take somebody's leg and put it behind their ear or whatever they're doing. Like I wouldn't want somebody who didn't know what they're doing. I feel like
I don't remember hearing, reading that there might be a certification. And certainly the employees in the one that I went to, they were all the types that would know what they were doing because of what they studied in school, the fact that some of them were personal trainers and certified in that. So maybe it's some kind of personal training certification, piece. I don't know, but I would hope so. Yeah, because it would be a little scary if someone doesn't know what they're doing, pushing your leg around. Yeah.
The other side of that, though, is even if it is a more transient employee base, I don't know. I've seen niches like that where it fits very neatly into, someone else's role. Like if they're a personal trainer and this is like the perfect bolt-on to, make extra money or whatever. It's like there may be a way to overcome, the transient nature of that workforce. It just depends on, what the certification looks like. Because like in Pilates, for example, it's a 500-hour process to be certified to teach Pilates. And that's not something that people can just, do because they want a short-term side hustle type thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I saw. A lot of them were personal trainers. So that may be exactly what your labor pool is just sort of a network of folks that are doing something else in fitness and filling out their week and their day coming in, working for you.
We've talked about churn. We've talked about marketing. I think that's like the LTV to CAC ratio here is something that's really important because it all plays into, they all play with each other. But that would be one of my first questions is when you look at, when you look at the churn on a monthly basis, and again, I don't know exactly how much this costs, but we'd want to understand what the monthly spend is, and then frequency, how long are they remaining as customers so that we can figure out how much a customer is worth to us. And then we want to look at their marketing to make sure that they're able to acquire customers in a way that allows us to do this profitably. Because I've seen, some of these lower ticket recurring revenue businesses, that's something that they run into as digital marketing has gotten a lot more competitive, is that even if that CAC to LTV ratio is somewhat strong, as their CAC has gone up, it's extended the payback period where they're having to prime the pump with a lot of marketing dollars, and it's not as efficient of a business as it used to be.
Yeah, this one, I wonder if they have a little bit of an advantage just because they're in Manhattan. And this, the locations in Manhattan can just generate a certain amount of foot traffic, folks coming in, on top of the digital marketing that they would be doing. I would think that would be the case in these locations versus, a suburban type location.
I would completely agree. And let's talk about Manhattan, and because there's a piece of that obviously on the consumer side of things, I think works to their advantage. I also think there's a piece of this on just the sell side of things that works to their advantage, because when you're in an area, if this is truly passive, which again, it's not passive, but if this is truly something that you can own while having a job, you're in the place with the highest concentration of people who can afford to pay this amount of money for it. So
Right.
I'm just curious, what kind of an impact do you think that could have on their ability to get 5X for this?
I think it has a great impact on it. Yeah, absolutely. If you can show somebody, look, I've been working this job and I've still been running it, and here's how it works. Yes, absolutely. You have more potential buyers to whom that is attractive and attainable for than you would in a lot of other places. Because there's some pretty good salaries in New York, but yet everyone always wants to make more money if they can. So I think that's a plus here. I still don't, as a lender, I hate the idea of someone buying a business and keeping a job. Even if the seller has done it, I don't think it's that easy ever, no matter what. And you're a new buyer, so you've got to learn everything while keeping your job. That's pretty hard to do. So if someone is going to do it that way, I would say they should have no debt. If they're going to, run it full time and $536,000 is enough for them, then great, quit your job. If you want to take debt, quit your job. If you're going to try to run it, and keep your job, pay all cash, maybe, or mostly cash and a little seller note.
It's interesting that you say that, because what I tell people a lot of times when they say they want to buy a franchise and keep their job is, I'm like, the analogy here is you are very, very highly levered on the operation side of things, right? There's financial side of things where you're highly levered, but that is what, just like when you're highly levered financially, every little, blip in the radar on the P&L, it's amplified, the impact, positive or negative. The same is true on the operation side of things. So I always say the art of small business operations is turning crises into inconveniences. Mm-hmm. You are doing the inverse when you own a business and you have a job, where little inconveniences become a crisis because it's a crisis to you based on your commitments elsewhere.
Yeah, you have no room, no margin for error for anything to go wrong in your day, because your day is already completely packed between job and I think that's great. Operational leverage. Yeah, you're highly levered with your time, and that's not a good spot. Just like being highly levered financially is not either.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And particularly if it's your first time owning a business, because I do think that there's something, once you've owned a business before, I always say, like, obviously you learn about business, but you also learn about yourself in business, which is equally as important. So having owned a few businesses, I know that there are boundaries for me that I have to set, where once we cross outside of these boundaries, I'm not the best owner in the world. We'll put it like that. And that's something that when you lack that clarity, it's hard to make this kind of a decision and make it make sense. So I'm curious on the SBA front, because we were talking about New York, a lot of affluent people with a lot of money to invest. I had a situation with my first franchise where I tried to get an SBA loan. I had some other folks on the cap table who had quite a bit of liquidity, and we had a hard time getting that approved. We ended up going the non-SBA route because this was a learning experience for me. But I guess there's something about how if you have a ton of liquidity, the SBA doesn't like that, because they're saying this really isn't for you. You should use your own money. This program exists for people who wouldn't otherwise have access to credit. Is that correct? And can you talk us through that?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have to be in the Goldilocks position for an SBA loan. So you can't have too little, because the banks want to get paid back, and they want you to have skin in the game and your guarantee. And so you can't be too small, but you can't be too big in terms of your balance sheet. Can't have too much liquidity, too much in liquid assets. The rule of thumb is basically if you're going to have an equal amount or greater than the loan amount in liquid personal assets after you put your equity in, after we subtract that amount out, you're probably too wealthy to be getting an SBA loan, and you're technically ineligible. But that's just for the personal guarantor, because the folks that are below 20%, might just be in the cap table for various reasons, whether they're investors or something else. they are not submitting personal financial statements. So we don't actually know how much they have. So technically they could be higher net worth individuals. And that's who you think would be investors typically anyway. But it's kind of a conundrum because the SBA wants you to be not too poor. The banks don't want you to be anyway. And you can't be too wealthy. So you kind of have to be right in the middle in order to be eligible.
And I see the why behind that. It still confuses me because, again, it's like if we're actually lending based on merit, the person who has more assets to pledge as collateral is the lower risk borrower, right? And so to me, that this is I don't know. To me, it just sounds really inefficient. But I get the why that the SBA is just basically saying, hey, this isn't for you. Is that fair?
Yes, it's counterintuitive, exactly to your point. Like we're telling people who are the most qualified they can't get this loan. It comes from this notion, though, which is not always true. It comes from the notion that, well, if you're that wealthy, you have credit available elsewhere. That's literally the language. But the reality is, when it comes to small businesses, you don't. There are no conventional programs for businesses under 2.5 million of EBITDA. They just don't exist. The SBA has become the sole source for those businesses. So it is, I agree with you. It's actually not, I don't think it's a great policy. I really don't. I get it, but I don't at the same time, because you're saying if wealthier people own small businesses, they should just be able to get loans somewhere else, and they really can't. Not even close to on the right kind of terms that small business needs. And so, I don't agree with it. We had a couple of years where that was not part of the rule, but it is back again. And I think it just has to do with a distaste in our Congress. They think that this is a giveaway program, which it is not. It is almost always zero subsidy, meaning the program fees pay for itself. And therefore, because they think of it as a giveaway program, they don't want rich people getting it. And that's kind of where it comes down to. But I agree. I think it's a little bit misguided in terms of a policy.
Hey everyone, it's Bill, and I want to tell you about maybe the most exciting sponsor we've had in a long time on the pod. It's called Capital Pad, and it is the thing that I wish existed when I started my journey of operating and investing in small businesses. So Capital Pad is a marketplace for acquisition entrepreneurs, that is, people who want to buy a business and need capital to list their deals and solicit capital from other people who want to invest in acquisition deals. So if you want to back somebody buying a small business, Capital Pad is the place to do it. And if you want to buy a business and need capital, you can go on Capital Pad to be introduced to investors. So the really great thing too from the investor side is that Capital Pad takes care of all of the details that can get hairy with small business acquisitions. They handle standardized terms, standardized governance, standardized distributions, all upfront in black and white. Basically, Capital Pad professionalizes investing in small businesses. And the returns can be really, really good. I'm so stoked they exist. It's founded by my friend Travis, who is a phenomenal entrepreneur in his own right. So if this sounds like something that is appealing to you, if you want to buy a small business and need capital, or if you want to invest in small businesses, go check out capitalpad.com and tell them that Acquisitions Anonymous sent you.
So if the buyer that we're thinking about here, somebody who's in New York has $10 million in the bank and they want to buy this for 2.6, if they came to you and you looked at their balance sheet and were like, hey, you're not going to get approved for an SBA loan, would one of the SBA lenders jump all over that and be like, hey, this doesn't make any sense why you couldn't get an SBA loan? You're a great borrower. You have a great profile. We're going to do this. We're going to circumvent the SBA and do this loan separately.
They can't. They literally cannot do that because they would be violating the black and white rules of the program, and the SBA would come along and not only take away the guarantee at the end of the day, but they would also kind of punish the lender for having gone around the rules. So they don't have an option. What they do have an option to do, and by the way, I am working on this with a couple of banks, is creating an SBA lookalike program for wealthier people. It doesn't exist, like I already said. It doesn't exist for a lot of reasons. Trying to work with a couple of banks to see if they would have an appetite for it. Keep the same kind of terms, but set the limits, for high net worth individuals. So maybe we'll see. But what's funny is the SBA thinks it already exists, and it does not.
So I guess where I was going with my question is like, would not that they would run it through the SBA, but again,
I see. Just do it on their own. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like that, to me, that seems like a good borrower.
It sounds easy, but it is not because they'll change the terms, and they'll say, we want a lot more equity. Even though you're wealthy, we want, all these things that makes it less attractive, once again, to make the, far greater equity investment, far shorter amortization schedule. All the terms will be much tighter. That's the way it exists today.
So is there anything else that, like, looking at this business, you would really want to dig into from a diligence standpoint? Like, provided that the financials check out, we've talked about churn, incredibly important, understanding the marketing, understanding the owner's actual level of involvement. What am I missing here?
Established in 2022. I know the brand hasn't maybe been around that much before that. So it is, still kind of a newer concept in general, but I think that would be probably my biggest concern with paying this kind of multiple, is that, what's the longevity of this brand, of this idea of, going to, not to a gym, but for stretching. So I think that would be the outlier for me, is that it's probably just too short a time horizon for me to feel that comfortable with investing this high a multiple.
Completely agree. And if this is the brand that I think that it is, I mean, they've only been around for, a few years longer than that. So they're all going to be on the earlier side of things. All things considered, though, I like the concept. I mean, I think that from the retention numbers I've seen, it seems to produce, like I mentioned, great results, and so I think it's well positioned. But yeah, still pretty early.
Yeah.
So me thinking about this deal, I would be a no, mainly because I think I would get out competed by, again, rich New Yorkers and people that are attracted to the quote unquote passive nature of this. I think that somebody who takes that more literally than I would be inclined to pay more of a premium than I'm willing to pay, given what I believe to be the case, if that's fair.
I 100% agree with you. I would be out for the exact same reasons. It's just, and the fact that I don't feel that's long enough to prove that this concept will last. And, I need to, if I'm going to pay this kind of multiple, I need to believe that it's going to last for at least 10 more years.
One thing that I'll mention just about the landscape of fitness and wellness in general is there are a lot of fundamentals about fitness and wellness that are to like, but the curriculum, the modality, like all of that is the equivalent of like the recipe in a food business.
Mm-hmm.
Like if people don't buy in to the modality, or to, the concept, the fitness curriculum, whatever it is. It does not matter how operationally savvy you are. It doesn't matter how scrappy you are. It doesn't matter how good you are at marketing. I mean, you are completely skiing uphill. So it's just for anybody listening that's interested in this space, be sure before you get into a wellness franchise, a wellness fitness, that you have validated that it is something that is sticky, because otherwise there are more of these that have failed, or not even failed, but just that have not done well in general, than those that have outperformed. But if you can find that sliver at the top, again, there's a lot to like about the industry overall.
Very much agree. All right.
Cool. This was fun. Let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again. Thanks, Connor.
Thanks, Heather.